Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. On behalf of the Assistive Technology Training and Technical Assistance Center, AT3, I would like to welcome you to today's session, Emergency Solutions for Powering Durable Medical Equipment and Assistive Technology. Next slide, please.
That's me, sorry.
Today's presenters are Rob Lucy, the Executive Director of the Texas Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities. Mr. Lucy's career included past jobs serving as the Accessibility Coordinator and Manager of the Accessibility and Web Support Team for his state's Vocational Rehabilitation Agency, as well as jobs in healthcare, supported employment, and special education. He is a graduate of the University of Texas with degrees in government and communications. His perspective as a person with a vision disability has helped him effectively advocate throughout his career for accessibility and the rights of Texans with disabilities. Along with Angela Stanbridge, a speech-language pathologist by training, she has over 35 years experience with assistive technology and is currently the director of Texas State AT program, the Texas Technology Access Program, housed at the University of Texas. Prior to her work at TTAP, Angela's career has included working in the public school setting, in private practice, in the augmentative and alternative communications private industry as a specialist providing training and technical assistance for public school personnel supporting AT for students with disabilities. Next slide, please. Just a few reminders for today's session. You can find contact details for the Assistive Technology Act program from your state or territory at the at3center.net state AT programs. Please enter any questions or comments you might have during today's presentation in the chat window. Comments will be addressed at the conclusion of the panel or at logical stopping points along the way. And I really encourage you to please complete the post-webinar survey at www.surveymonkey.com. Please use this link following today's presentation. Without further ado, I will turn this over to Angela.
Hi, and welcome to very hot and sunny Texas here. Ron and I collaborate on a lot of projects, and this particular training grew out of the need identified from Winter Storm Uri, when I'm sure all of you saw that all over the national news, but obviously needs were not met, so we found a gap. And so Ron corralled a group of folks together with various stakeholders and people with various knowledge bases, and our committee had several projects, and one of them was to come up with this training. So we've done this a few times. We did have other collaborators, so it wasn't just Ron and me, but both of us worked together with other folks that had extensive knowledge as well. So I'm going to start with a little introduction. Objectives: we want to provide planning resources for backup power during emergencies for up to 72 hours. That's what FEMA says, 72 hours, although it's been my personal observation as I have lived through several emergencies, they often last more than 72 hours. To support durable medical equipment and assistive technology for people with disabilities and those who are aging. The audience could be people with disabilities and those who are aging, their caregivers, and any service providers or emergency professionals that may support this population. And a disclaimer. I will tell you, we've done this a couple of times, and one of the feedback items we have gotten is you seem to be a little redundant on the safety and concern issues. And my answer is yes, we are, and we're going to keep the redundancy for the safety issues. So as we go through this, you're going to hear us repeat these disclaimer items often. So I'm just telling you, it's coming. Always follow manufacturer's recommendations. Whenever you're using alternatively and modified power sources inappropriately, you can risk fire, electric shock, acid burn in the case of batteries, exposure to toxic and hazardous substances, damage to your DME or AT equipment, damage to the power source, and also carbon monoxide poisoning in the case of generators that are fueled with gasoline or diesel fuel. So we will repeat these, like I said, again and again and again.
Yeah, it's rare that misapplied training can actually result in injury or death. So I agree with Angela. We need to emphasize safety throughout. All right. So
I'm going to turn it over to Ron now. He's going to talk a little bit about preparation. There is an image on the screen of Beaumont, Texas, during one of the many hurricanes that we have had in our state. I'm really not even sure.
Yeah, I believe this was Hurricane Harvey. And so when we talk about why to prepare, as Angela said, this is a graphical reminder of why we prepare as the water level from this flood is up several feet, nearly covering the Welcome to Beaumont sign. We want you to prepare for all hazards, but the reason we want you to prepare is to keep yourself and your family safe and to be prepared specifically with this training for extended power outages. We know that people that use durable medical equipment are aware of the fragility of needing to be dependent on backup power for your medical devices, but we're wanting to go beyond just having a backup battery for uninterrupted power for 15 or 20 minutes, but to plan for that national standard of 72 hours or more for your backup power needs. Of course, on the next slide, planning is the key to be successfully prepared. And I'm going to give a bit of a shout out to our friends at the Pacific ADA Center in California. They're one of the preeminent national ADA centers on the topic of emergency management and individual preparedness for people with disabilities. They have a power planning checklist, which we've linked in this presentation and included on the resources page, which will take you in a very systematic way down through the steps you need to plan for your individual backup power needs, whether you're an assistive technology user or somebody who depends on durable medical equipment. All right, next slide.
Yeah, I opened the document and scanned through it, Ron, for them to get a flavor of it.
Outstanding.
Next slide is up.
All right, so prepare for all hazards, including natural disasters and man-made hazards. All we have to do this summer is watch the national news to see how critical this is, whether it's wildfires in the Southwest in New Mexico or California, or the tragic floods in Kentucky just a couple of weeks ago. And this year so far, we've had a fairly quiet Atlantic hurricane season, but hurricane season doesn't end until November. So there's plenty to be prepared for. And the three tenets of individual preparedness are to make a plan, build a kit, and stay informed. And then of course, the fourth one, which I always like to add, is get involved, which means helping to build a more resilient community, whether it's in your neighborhood, your city, or your county. We've included a lot of really great resources from FEMA on this page. FEMA's main preparedness site is ready.gov. And because this presentation was originally developed for a Texas audience, we have the Texas ready.gov website. Your state will undoubtedly also have a state preparedness website for your citizens, and we encourage you to track that down. Now, because all disasters are local, we especially encourage you to access your local emergency management resources. Emergency management is organized in all of our states at the parish or county level, parish level if you're from Louisiana. And then finally, we encourage you to get to know your disability integration advisor for your FEMA region and for your state. We're really fortunate to have a great disability integration advisor team with FEMA Region 6 and the disability integration advisor, Tammy Goodwin, who's assigned to support Texas. So each of your states are part of a FEMA region, and they will help provide training and preparedness resources for Texans with disabilities. All right, next slide.
Could I add one embellishment to that about the FEMA
Absolutely.
app? So unless you've downloaded and played with it, you may not know this, but you can put in multiple zip codes for notifications. So let me give you an application of how you might use that. So we have grandparents in Granbury, we have grandparents in Houston, we have grandparents in a small town south of Houston. So we put all of those zip codes in addition to ours into our FEMA app, and we linked it with all of our smart technology so that when there is a notification in any of those places, we'll get that so that we'll know if we have to, you know, call grandma's neighbor and make sure that she knows what's going on and is prepared and has a plan in place. And is somebody going to be able to take her to a shelter if that needs to occur? So I don't know if, unless you've actually gone in and played with the app, you may not be aware of that.
And I know a lot of you are thinking, are these apps accessible? The FEMA app has been prepared with Section 508 WCAG design standards, and it does work with assistive technologies like VoiceOver on the iPhone. So it is accessible to individuals with disabilities.
Okay, Ron, it's on general backup power needs now.
All right. So these are the kind of things that really everybody needs to think of, including people with disabilities. Want to make sure that you have backup power for at least 72 hours for the following examples of things. Lighting, like flashlights and headlamps and lanterns. When we were without power in our home in the dead of winter, when it was 9 degrees for 5 days, you know, it's been a long time since Americans rose with, you know, the break of dawn and went to bed when it got dark out. You know, with consistent electric power, you can stay up all night long and watch TV with your lights on. But when the power went out, it was like camping inside your home. We were dependent on headlamps to cook meals inside our kitchen, since we still had natural gas, and needed a big lantern for the living room for everybody. And so fortunately, we're a family that was very active in Boy Scouts and camping. So we had a lot of these things. A lot of folks don't. But after Winter Storm Year, it made me reevaluate some of the things that we needed, like a better rechargeable lantern. So along with lighting, having environmental warmth or cooling, if we were to lose power in the middle of a Texas summer when it's 104 degrees out and 90% humidity, we would want to have battery powered fans. Having information and communications, needing to know from our local utility or from the city or county how long the power outage was going to last. So we had backup radios and power for our cell phones and other devices. And then refrigeration. Your refrigerator and all of that perishable food will only stay safe to eat for so many hours. And there's things you can do to make it last longer. You can put a large quilt over your refrigerator for extra insulation. Just tell the kids not to keep opening it. We were actually fortunate in that keeping the food from spoiling wasn't hard. We just put it outside because it was colder outside than it was in the refrigerator. We packed an ice chest with snow and ice from outside as well. But for many people on special diets, needing to keep your medications or any special food requirements safe from being spoiled, it's important to have backup power for those. And we're going to provide you with some really practical solutions for how you can maintain a refrigerator with some backup power that you may already have access to. All right, next slide.
Ron and Angela, could I interrupt just a moment and ask you to please turn your camera on when you're speaking?
Sure. I apologize. My camera is not working. It was interfering with my microphone. And so I'm not going to be able to do that. But if I can speak slower to make sure the captioning keeps up, will that work?
That will probably be helpful, but I do need to say that because we have interpreters, I'm not able to pin speakers that would turn off the spotlighting for the interpreters. We apologize that we can't do those things simultaneously, but you might be able to, as a participant, if you will change your view to a gallery view, you may be able to see anybody with their camera, any of the panelists with their cameras turned on, in addition to the interpreters.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize for my hardware failure there. All right, on the next slide, we have some examples of off-the-shelf communications and lighting solutions. And these are just a few pictures of solutions that we have in our own home. We've got a hand crank radio that actually has backup batteries that are rechargeable, in addition to having a hand crank. And it has the NOAA weather band, which can wake you up in the middle of the night in case there's a tornado warning, as long as AM, FM, and shortwave radio. We've got some GMRS and FMRS walkie-talkies that also have a weather band, and just your old-fashioned 9-volt transistor radio. So those are all great backups to your cell phone. Nowadays, cell phones with all the apps and alerts, the charge on that phone may not last as long as you want it to. So having a AM FM radio with a 9-volt battery or even a backup battery, those radios can run for days on those batteries and really preserve the power of your cell phone for other purposes. And then once again, we talked about lighting solutions. You'll see some examples here of some headlamps that are great for keeping your hands free when you're doing cooking or other activities of daily living. And then some lanterns that are rechargeable, and then your traditional flashlights that take different types of alkaline batteries. Next slide.
Yes, I also noticed too, when I was at a camping store recently, there are some lanterns that are solar powered as well now too. So, and their prices were no more expensive than these types of flashlights.
Yeah, one quick tip on that. Y'all have been to plenty of big box hardware stores where they have those landscaping lights that you can plug into the ground around your patio, and they have a solar panel on them, and they charge during the day, and then an LED light comes on. You can also buy several of those and put those outside to charge during the day and then bring them in at night, and they're very inexpensive. The one challenge is if you put those in an emergency kit for the next disaster and you don't maintain that battery by periodically charging them, it is possible that they will not hold a charge for very long afterwards.
Someone also commented there's also hand crank flashlights as well, and that is true.
Yeah, if you've ever used them though, you'll quickly appreciate the good battery powered flashlight. All right, we have some off-the-shelf battery power options. In this picture on the left, you'll see some USB battery banks. The small ones can probably recharge a cell phone no more than a couple of times. And those USB power banks, you often see those as free giveaways or swag at a conference. The bigger kind of silver one in the back would be about $10 or $12 at a Walmart, and it can potentially recharge a cell phone up to 4 or 5 times. There's one to the right that's bigger, that's silver with a black face on it. It has actually a 110 volt power inverter, and it could run a laptop conceivably. It's a bigger lithium ion battery, and it could charge several cell phones several times. Probably the weakest of the ones you see in the picture here is the one in the front that's black. It actually uses alkaline AA batteries, and it takes forever to recharge a cell phone on that one. Its one redeeming quality is that if you don't have a way of recharging your rechargeable power sources, but you have a very large supply of alkaline batteries, you could use that to power USB devices. And then, of course, one of my favorite sources is this car battery jump kit. It has a very robust lithium ion battery that can start a sports utility vehicle, but it also has the ability to, with the Type-C and USB ports on it, it can run a variety of devices that require USB power, including recharging phones. And that one has, all of these are rated by amp hours and in terms of how much power they can store. Obviously, more money gets you more amp hours of battery storage. And then on the right, we have a variety of cables. I'm not going to go through all of them, but one of the solutions we have in our family's preparedness kit is a multi-cable solution. We're a family that has a mix of Android phones and Apple iPhones, so we need both Lightning and Type-C connections, and we even have some legacy devices that use micro USB, so you can go on a place like Amazon and buy a charging cable that has all 3 types, or and sometimes even 4 different cables at the end. Now, you wouldn't want to necessarily plug 4 devices into that one cable because it would take forever to recharge those devices. But we have these extra cables in our glove boxes of our vehicles and also in our home. You can imagine with a family of 5, somebody's always looking for a recharging cable. All right, next slide. Okay, Angela's going to take this one.
So just for the sake of definitions, these are the definitions we chose. Of course, you might need to tweak it for your particular setting. We decided durable medical equipment was the equipment that and supplies ordered by a healthcare provider for everyday or extended use, such as wheelchairs, oxygen machines, lifts, suction machines, etc. And it also may be life-sustaining. Assistive technologies, technology that enables a person with a disability or who is aging to access their community, education, vocation, and/or independent function, such as communication devices, computers, tablets, and smart technologies. Obviously, neither of those lists are all inclusive. So here's some examples of some disability-specific backup power needs, and we heard a lot of stories connected to these particular types of tools in both our work group and then right after Winter Storm Uri. So life-sustaining DME, such as oxygen concentrators, feeding pumps, and suction machines, that got quite a bit of national attention as well. I'm sure that most of you saw some of the cable news stations talking about the individuals in Texas that either suffered medical emergencies or there was actually some people that died because of lack of access to those tools. Hearing aid batteries, telecommunication tools for the deaf and hard of hearing, power mobility, that's another one that made a lot of news, such as wheelchairs, scooters, and lifts. There was a kind of a local advocate that she does live independently, but does have a fairly significant physical disability. And she was basically stuck in her chair for the entire time until someone could get to her because her lift wasn't functioning. And of course, that has ramifications. Augmentative communication devices for people that don't speak orally, computers, tablets, cell phones, braille note takers, and any kind of A-tier software app on a computer or tablet. And then medications and nutritions that must be refrigerated or possibly administered with some kind of technology as well. So here's some examples with pictures. There's a picture of a nebulizer and a ventilator. Certainly this does not represent every kind, but you'll notice that we kind of noted the requirements for that. So we're going to get into this in a little bit more detail in a minute, but knowing your assistive technology and DME tools and noting what they require to be able to run, what electricity requirements they have to run, is the first step in being able to support your DME and AT in case of an emergency. So one of them is a Trilogy 100. It's a portable ventilation system. It runs off of low flow O2. The respirator Trilogy ventilator can control volume and pressure in the ventilation, making it easier for the patient to breathe. And then the nebulizer, lots of folks use nebulizers. It's a small machine that turns liquid medicine into a mist. You sit with the machine and breathe through a connected mouthpiece. The medicine goes into your lungs as you take slow, deep breaths for 10 to 15 minutes. So it's not a constant thing, but sometimes someone will have an event where they're not able to breathe and they need to get that medication in. So these are just some examples of some of the tools that people had challenges with staying charged and being able to use during her Winter Storm Uri. Then we have a graphic on this picture. This is from Hurricane Harvey, also made the national news. This was a Houston Chronicle article of a nursing home in the Dickinson is a small town near Houston. And there's actual individuals in a nursing home floating, and there's a kind of a woman floating off of her mobility cart, it looks like. So being able to supply energy to your wheelchairs and other mobility DME is obviously a huge concern. So you have to plan to have at least one extra battery or scooter battery available. For some of our consumers, this can be a financial burden. So that is something to consider when you're looking at funding sources. Connect extra batteries to trickle chargers or battery maintainers. We will talk a little bit more about these later, but they're basically about the size of a two shelf file cabinet. They stay plugged into the wall and then they charge from that wall and stay constantly charged. So that if the power goes down, you can then plug your DME into that trickle charger, and it acts like a regular plug that you would plug your DME into. Keep a manual wheelchair as a backup if possible. Again, could be a financial burden or possibly a space burden for some of our consumers. Monitor the life expectancy of your chairs and battery. For those on the call that are not AT program employees, you may or may not know that many states have recycle reuse programs where you are able to get recycled dedicated medical equipment, usually provided on a sliding scale or a lesser charge of some kind, so that it may be an avenue for some folks to be able to get those secondary manual chairs or maybe even possibly some of the batteries. And then when you plan to evacuate, make sure that you've got all your charging stuff with you, all of your extra cables, all of your extra batteries, manuals if that's relevant, and any wheelchair maintenance equipment that might be needed for your particular chair. You want to plan for your DME AT low-tech alternatives. So for example, if you use a communication device, have a low-tech version of that communication device, preferably either laminated or printed on what they call that vinyl paper. So it's literally a plastic paper. A lot of the AAC manufacturers already have available sort of that, you know, first page of most of the communication apps now have sort of a 35 to 50 or 60 core vocabulary words. Even if you're just printing that, you can still communicate a large portion of what you would need to say.
This handheld optical low vision aids, this is one that I really depend on, although I use a screen magnifier, screen reader, and a video magnifier and all the other high tech. I also depend on a pocket magnifier, a Bausch & Lomb loop. And I feel so strongly about that solution. I have one in the glove box of each of our cars, one in my laptop bag, one in my desk drawer, one in my underwear drawer. So having kind of backups for your backups that don't require any batteries and kind of accomplish some of the same tasks as your powered technology, maybe not just as well, but certainly serve as an option.
Small dry erase boards for communication, or boogie boards, or another version of that. Those are those kind of fake tablets that aren't really tablets. Manual wheelchairs, and then a high efficiency ice chest or cooler for your medications. So now they have of course, the well-known brand name is Yeti, but there's a lot of knockoff brands available as well. So they're more insulated than a standard ice chest. And even if you only have a standard ice chest, there's small things you can do to that. For example, the lids to a standard ice chest are not insulated, but you can get some of that closed cell foam, that Tyvek stuff they put on the outsides of houses, glue it to the top of your ice chest, and you've already made your ice chest more insulated than it was before. So using better ice chest to keep those medications and or formula foods, things like that, cold.
Even a vacuum thermos like the Thermos brand thermos, you could put your insulin in a Ziploc bag and put it inside that thermos and pack it with ice cubes, and it's going to stay cold and good for days. So it's a more efficient solution than trying to keep your whole refrigerator powered, if that's not a solution that you have access to.
Or if it looks like the emergency is going to be for an extended amount of time without electricity. So don't want to frighten everybody, but I'm gonna make you go back to third grade science, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the science behind electricity. I will not require you to do any math in public, I promise. So when we were preparing for this, I scoured the internet for a user-friendly, simple way to get people comfortable with this, because you really have to be aware of the electricity requirements of your gadgets to be able to support them in an emergency. And the best thing I found was an analogy that voltage is kind of like a water hose, and the pressure that pushes it through is the hose is measured in volts. So a watt is the common measure for power. So that's volts times amps. Devices are often described by the required electricity to charge the device, such as 1.5 volt battery or a 6 volt AC wall charger. Those are probably terms you've heard before. Direct current from batteries powers many of our DME and AT devices, and alternate current is accessed via outlets in the walls. And in the United States, that's 60 hertz, 110 and 210 volts. Now, all that you're going, oh, it's third grade math, I don't want to do it, I can't do it. It's okay. That's all right, because we have a solution for you. There's a little bit more on electricity on this one, talking about DC batteries. They're charged from AC outlets sometimes. You want to identify what your DME and AT need to be able to power it. And then understanding that amp hours are a measure of time and power, or how long the battery source is going to last with that voltage. Now, before you haze over, let me let you know that, yes, this is the 21st century and there's an app for that. So you don't have to really know any math, because there are apps and applets on a computer that you can download that if you just know 2 of the variables, then you can easily find out what the needs of your gadget are. So the first thing I would suggest, look in your manual, because it may just tell you right there in the manual what you need, and then jot that down on your planning sheet that my wheelchair, my communication device, my tablet needs this formula for its power to be able to power it. So you can search the internet for a free power calculator, or search your app or whatever platform you use to do this. And I have a little example of what that looks like. So this is the back of my computer charger. I don't know how well this is reading on your screen, but it's got, it tells you on the back of the chargers your what the output is of that charger and what the requirements are of your gadget. So you type those in over here in your little online applet, and then you hit calculate. If, as long as you know 2 variables, it will tell you the rest of it. So it's simple, easy to use. So my suggestion, again, first of all, look in the manufacturer's manual, see if it's already there, write it down on your planning prepare sheet. If it's not there, find an applet, find an app in your phone. They're just called power calculators is all they're called. Then look on the back of your charger, fill in 2 of the variables, and it will tell you everything you know. Then write that on your planning document. Now, for those of you that want more, we do have a chart with all of the different formulas based on what variables you may already know. So for all the people that were like, oh boy, we're going to talk about 3rd grade math, I'm excited, this slide is for you. So you can refer back to this if you prefer to just do the math. You can certainly do that.
So this is known as Ohm's law for those of you that nerd out a little bit more. And I assume since many of you are from an assistive technology or technology background, you're probably familiar with Ohm's law.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Okay, I did forget to name the actual math. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay, now we're going to talk about batteries, and Ron is up again.
All right. So this kind of splash picture here, we have a picture of a variety of batteries. We're going to go to the very next slide and start out with the 2 major types of batteries. We have your non-rechargeable or disposable batteries. And just a quick word on that. The quality of alkaline batteries has really improved over the past couple of decades. When I remember the dry cell batteries from my childhood in the 1970s and 80s, you'd stick them in a toy and they would last about half a day and then you were done. Modern Energizer, Duracell, or, Kirkland batteries actually can last unused in their packaging for up to 10 years if stored in, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to store batteries to optimize their life, and then are pretty powerful. And once again, printed on the batteries, not all batteries are the same, but they can talk about the number of milliamps of power they can deliver right on the packaging, so you can read that. We do have lithium batteries that are non-rechargeable. The major types, of course, are AAA, AA, also 4A batteries, and then your type C, D, and 9-volt. These days, it's much more common to see the AA and AAA for a lot of your smaller electronics. There still are some practical uses for C-cell and D-cell batteries, and for the 9-volt. You'll often see the 9-volt batteries in your smoke detectors in your home, or your carbon monoxide detectors. Some of the C and D cells are for devices that require a larger amount of power. Of course, we have mercury and zinc batteries. The mercury are often considered like a button battery that you would see for hearing aids or other small devices. And then the other types of batteries are rechargeable batteries, and not all rechargeable batteries are the same. Of course, lithium ion batteries are the most reliable type of rechargeable battery because they can be recharged the greatest number of times before being worn out, and they're less susceptible to battery memory or recharge memory. The older rechargeable batteries like the nickel metal hydride, if you didn't completely discharge it and then completely recharge it, the efficiency of the battery and its ability to store power could be compromised by not properly maintaining it. And over time, if you didn't use it properly, it would not hold as much of a charge as it did when it was new. Likewise with lead acid batteries, the standard lead acid battery in your automobile is meant for just a peak use of power to start your car, but it's not really meant to be used for repeated charging and discharging. If you're going to go with a lead acid battery as part of your backup power needs, you want to look for something called a deep cycle battery for a lead acid battery. Lead acid batteries are much more affordable than lithium ion batteries. They're a lot heavier. They don't typically have as much power density as lithium ion, but they're much more affordable. And then you get into some other battery types like glass or gel batteries, which you see more often in batteries for powered mobility devices. All right, let's go to the next slide. We'll get into some battery tips here. So a lot of the need for disposable batteries has been overtaken by powered USB backups, which are best for small devices. We showed a picture of that earlier in our presentation. You have the small stick ones that, as I mentioned, could recharge a phone maybe 1.5 times, and then the flat rectangle ones, which have a little bit more power density. They have maybe a 0.5 amp hour of charge. And then you have the much higher capacity USB powered solutions, which can be about $100. Yeti Goal Zero is a maker of a lot of batteries that are used by outdoor enthusiasts, backpackers, and people like that. But they're also getting into the backup power solutions for homeowners too, people that want to be a little bit more prepared for their family. And some of these high capacity lithium ion battery banks, as Angela was saying, they can be the size of a 2-drawer file cabinet, but you're not just getting a battery. At that point, you're also getting a trickle charger and a DC to AC power inverter. The power inverter takes the DC power and turns it to 110 volt AC power that can be used by small devices in your home. You're not likely to be able to charge or run a refrigerator or an air conditioning unit off of that, but you could run smaller devices like fans and laptops and radios and things like that, depending on the size and the capacity. And then you'll see people that are talking about a solar powered generator, and that's nothing more than usually a large capacity lithium ion battery with solar panels and a power inverter. And we've got another slide further in the presentation that talks about best case use scenarios for using solar power in areas where a gas powered generator would not be appropriate.
If I could add one comment to Ron, for those high power or high capacity lithium ion battery banks, one solution as a state that we were maybe thinking might work for those AT program folks out there is if you could find a funding source to possibly supply those for some individuals, it might be some of their best solutions. So that's a relatively inexpensive solution that would solve a lot of the problems with the more heavy duty AT and DME like wheelchairs and AAC devices and things like that. So I'm not saying it's necessarily the answer, but it's an answer we may continue to look for a solution for. Anyway.
So our friends and colleagues in California, they've been having public safety power outages from Pacific Gas and Electric due to the wildfires that they've been having that were sparked by downed power lines. And so in response to that, they worked with their independent living centers to provide these large capacity lithium ion batteries with the power inverter and the trickle charger. And it's quite nice because you plug that system into your wall power, and then you plug the DME into the battery, and the DME runs with the pass-through power of that battery system. And then when the power goes off, it just continues to charge or power the DME. And because it's such a large capacity system, it can conceivably power that DME for up to 3 days. So when storing batteries, you want to certainly check the expiration date. As I said, your more popular national battery brands, if you read the shelf life, they can be good for up to 10 years stored in your emergency kit, provided they're stored properly and the contacts don't touch each other and they're kept in the original packaging. You want to avoid extreme temperatures and humidity. That means don't keep them in a garage in Texas. Even storing batteries in the glove box of your car, they're going to not last nearly as long as if they're stored in your home. But you need to have an extra set of batteries for your flashlight in your car. So just be prepared to swap them out more often. And then Angela turned me on to a really great battery organizer box. And we're not doing any commercial endorsements here. Here's just a picture of one that you can find online. And what I like about this is it has a space for all the different types. You see the D cells on the left, the C cells next to that, the AA's and AAA's, and then even a section for storing the button batteries for hearing aids. And what this accomplishes is it keeps you from throwing your batteries in a drawer and having the contacts touch each other, and then have, you open that drawer a few months later and they're all corroded and dead. So this just makes sure that the contacts aren't touching each other and the batteries are organized in the way that you want them to be when you need them. And corrosion is one of the biggest killers of batteries. Leaving batteries inside a device, if that device accidentally gets turned on like a headlamp or a flashlight, it will not only drain the batteries, but it can also damage the device as the battery leaks onto the contacts of that device. Sometimes you can rescue the device by getting an emery board or sandpaper and sanding off the corrosion, but that can do some significant damage if you store the battery inside the device, and that happens. A couple of other hints. If you're preparing a home emergency kit or gathering batteries, try to purchase devices that use the same types of batteries. I don't mean like lithium versus alkaline, but I mean all AA for your headlamps and your radios and things like that, or all AAA. It's easier if you have common battery types than, looking around in the dark for the D cells and the C cells and that sort of thing. As we already said, store batteries separately from the devices to avoid corrosion from happening, or trying to turn on that radio or that flashlight and have it already be dead. And check and recharge your batteries on a consistent schedule. As Angela was remarking the other day, we used to do that on daylight savings time and daylight standard time when we turn our clocks back or forward, but Congress has passed a law that that's going to be coming to an end next year. And so we think one date that you might want to use for checking your batteries is on September 11th or during National Preparedness Month in September. And then 6 months after that, that's a good time to check your home emergency kit, check your batteries, check your smoke detectors, that sort of thing. And for the rechargeable batteries, plug them in per the instructions for the battery manufacturer, and then swap out your alkaline batteries if they're getting old. Okay, next we're going to talk about power inverters. And some power inverters come integrated into a battery and others are sold separately. And this is an example of a popular power inverter that you can buy online. It's the Cobra Pro, and it's a 3,000 watt power inverter. We're going to get into recommendations on how to choose the right size of inverter. Looking at this, you can see that there are 110 volt AC plugs on the front and USB outlets. And then generally you have a power indicator that gives you the status of the device. And then on the other end, you'll have either ring terminals or alligator clips to clip that to a 12 volt battery. Next slide, we're going to talk about what is a portable power inverter and what does it do. So a power inverter simply converts DC power from a 12 volt battery into AC power that can be used for a lot of common devices that you would normally just plug into the wall. It connects to a 12 volt battery, like a car battery, or it could be any other 12 volt battery. And then you plug the AC devices into the front of the inverter. This is where we're also going to get into a little bit more math in a couple more slides. In order to know how much power you can provide to that inverter, the inverter is rated for a certain number of watts, and then we're going to also talk about surge power. So it draws its power from a deep cycle or a conventional car battery. And then you can also connect that to the car battery when it's running, when the engine's running, to maintain consistent power. And then finally, you can create a battery backup with more capacity by putting batteries into parallel. And that's how you connect the cables to each other rather than in series. And we'll provide more information in the notes on that. So power inverters that take direct current to alternate current. Want to use a power use it to power the battery, and then you can unplug the battery from the power inverter after you've charged it, take it into your home and use it to run or charge your devices. Not all power inverters work for all things. Some of the smaller inverters that are 300 watt are good for charging devices like cell phones and laptops, but not for bigger devices. Peak power is known as startup power. If you've ever been in the kitchen when your refrigerator kicks on, it kind of makes a certain noise when the compressor first kicks on. And that can take a peak power of 1500 watts or much higher startup power. And then once the compressor starts running on the refrigerator, the power demand drops almost immediately down to just 300 or 400 watts of power. So that peak or startup power is what is needed to start the motor or start the device. So when you're looking for a power inverter, think about what you're going to use that device for. And then you want to purchase something that can deliver the peak power to start the device, even though it may not run at that same level. If you're going to be running more than one device off your power inverter, gets back into the math again. You want to look at the power demand for each device in watts and add those together to see if your power inverter can run those devices simultaneously. Otherwise, you may need to, for example, run your refrigerator for a period of time to get it cooled down and then unplug the refrigerator and use it to run other devices. Power inverter must be clipped to the battery, usually with alligator cables. There's other types of cables like ring cables that more securely attach the power inverter to the top of the engine to the battery. You can use you want to use an appropriately rated extension cord for the amount of power in watts that's delivered by your inverter. Then, of course, this gets back to the safety that we talked about before. Ventilation is required if you're using a car to run your power inverter. Do not run the power inverter in the car in your garage. Even if you raise the garage door, there's still a risk of carbon monoxide coming into the house. So be sure to back the car out into the driveway. So one example we calculated that if you use a power inverter and a countertop ice maker with a full tank of gas in your car and a power inverter, you could power that ice maker long enough to produce ice for a month on a single tank of gasoline. And with that ice that you produce from that countertop ice maker, you can fill your high efficiency ice chest, keep your medications cool and your food cool. And that uses a lot less power than trying to run the refrigerator for that extended power outage. So getting into choosing the right DC to AC power inverter. Once again, we talked about choose a size based on the number of watts that's required by the device you're trying to run. Also, you want to consider the vehicle or the battery that you're going to be running your power inverter. If you have a large sports utility vehicle like a Toyota Highlander or a big pickup truck, a Ford F-150, it can run the higher watt rated power inverters. But if you have a small subcompact car, it may not be able to run the power inverters that pull more watts. So check with your vehicle owner's manual as well to see how much power you can put out of your alternator through your battery to that inverter. And then once again, multiplying the amps times the volts gives you the number of watts for your device, as we had mentioned before. And then you add each device's power needs together to come up with the total number of watts to determine the size of the inverter that you want to purchase. And finally, it's always good to buy a power inverter that's 10 to 20% bigger than the amount of power that you think you want to use. If you draw more power than it can deliver, you're going to burn out fuses or trip breakers on the inverter or in your car. So it's good to go for more. And remember, you may not need to run all of your devices simultaneously. If you can, for example, run the refrigerator through an inverter for a period of time and then switch over to recharging your laptop or your phones, it can keep you within the limits of the device. Angela, is there anything else you want to add on the topic of power inverters?
No, we have the, we want to add that part about the pure sine wave for some
Okay.
devices.
Yeah, I was recently at a conference talking to home medical equipment providers, and they wanted to emphasize some power inverters. They have what's called a modified sine wave, or a square wave, and others produce what's called a pure sine wave. And the ones that provide a pure sine wave work better with certain medical equipment, and also with some computer equipment that requires that type of sine wave. Generally, if you're going to use this for things like clocks or precision instruments or medical equipment, you'll want to go with a pure sine wave power inverter, and they're really not that much more expensive. But be sure to read the specs when you're shopping for one to make sure that you get one that works with the type of equipment that you're going to be using it for.
Just kind of to re-emphasize, if we're doing that, oh no, they're doing the third grade math thing again. Just ask your manufacturer of your device if that's a concern or not. If you're not, well, I don't know, does mine have that or not? Don't worry too much about it. Also, this whole piece about building your own inverter, doing your own stuff, this is maybe not the right solution for everyone. You need to know your consumers and know your clients to know what you might want to share with them as a potential solution. There's another one of those disclaimers I promised we would have out there.
Yeah,
I put up the slide for additional power inverters.
Yeah, I'm not going to go through this since we've talked a lot about this,
Right.
but the yellow one at the bottom, do not plug the power inverter into your home's circuit breaker box or into a plug in your home. You want to just plug the power inverter to the car or the 12-volt battery, and then run an extension cord into the home or plug devices directly into the inverter. Anytime you plug a backup power source into your home, it involves working with an electrician and getting an inspection from your city or county code inspector, and a lot more complication. That was one of the feedbacks that we got from one of our past presentations, was from an electric company and their engineers saying, we want you to emphasize that folks not plug these inverters into their home.
Well, and the other piece of that, if you do, and then someone starts working on the line to repair it, you can potentially electrocute someone too. So
you're not just energizing your home, you're energizing the lines near your home.
So it's not just, don't do this because you have to get the city to inspect it. Don't do this because it's a safety issue for anyone working the electrical line. And then we do have, we found one online source that was shareable. Yeah, we do it yourself example. So that
we call this the bushcraft solution. Yes. We know that the Yeti Goal Zero solutions can be several $1,000s and may be out of reach for a lot of our customers that use DME or assistive technology. This solution, we talked about putting batteries in parallel. This is a picture that shows what that looks like. And each 12-volt battery that you add in parallel doesn't increase the power, it increases the amp hours. It gives you more power depth, not necessarily more volts. And then that's connected to a power inverter. And then you can plug the devices into the inverter to run them in your home. And then, of course, you can go to a place like AutoZone or an auto store and get a trickle charger that maintains the 12-volt batteries. If you wanted to assemble this using a box or a tote to make it seem more elegant, this is not an ideal solution if you have young children or pets in your house that like to roll around on wires and cables. So this solution may not be appropriate for everybody, and it has to be the right solution for the right environment. But we did provide a link because we realize, you know, after you follow all the safety precautions, this may be a solution that could work for you. All right, we're going to pass it to Angela to talk about generators.
Generators, woohoo! All right. So you would think this would just be the solution. Everybody should just have a generator. Maybe, maybe not. So there are several types, gasoline, propane, something called dual fuel that can use both. These are all flammable. They are flammable materials. You have to take appropriate precautions for storage and handling of said fuels. Gasoline, you cannot easily store this for more than 6 to 12 months without additives. So there's some maintenance involved. It is easier to manage refilling from smaller containers. So it's not like you can just have a, big container of your gasoline in your garage waiting for when the hurricane comes to start your generator. You need multiple small ones or a large one that you can get the gas out of that into smaller ones, because you can't take the big one to fill your generator. So there's a whole piece of maintenance that some of our consumers may not be able to do independently. So when, again, you have to know who your clients are going to be and know who your consumers are when you're sharing solutions with them. So if they don't have the infrastructure and support to be able to do this independently, or the caregivers that can facilitate that, this may not be a solution for them because of that. So propane, easier to use. This is like what you're using on your gas grill, that kind of fuel. It's easier to store long-term, and it could be safer, but you do have to ensure your propane tanks are full in preparation for a disaster. So you would think everybody would sort of have that on their mind. Oh, it's hurricane season. Maybe I should get my propane tanks all together. But, it'll be the day before and everybody's at the 7-Eleven down the street trying to get the last rhino propane tank that's available. So that may not necessarily, again, there's a maintenance piece to that your consumers will need to consider as they work out their solutions. So here's a little bit of overview information. There are whole house generators. They usually connect to natural gas lines only. So in Texas, we use a lot of natural gas. This is a solution for individuals. They do have to be professionally installed, and you usually have to have some kind of municipal inspection or approval to have it done, and it has to be done by qualified personnel. So unless you are a generator installer yourself, you're going to have to hire somebody to do this, because it's not something you can just figure out on your own. There's a skill set involved, and they're usually quite expensive, $10,000 or more. They do have a large capacity and can power larger appliances like air conditioners, refrigerators, whatever needs someone might have. And they have potential use beyond 72 hours, because typically natural gas is not going to go down during emergencies. Though I think it did during Uri, so maybe that's not really true.
It still ran to many houses. I think the challenge was not all power plants had
right? Yeah.
natural gas. Yeah, but for residential gas, I think we were okay.
Some general safety issues: read all of the manufacturer's instructions and warranties. Nobody ever reads the instructions. Read the instructions on a generator. Obviously, there is a risk of electrical shock. You have to disconnect the power from your AC sources before connecting them to your generator. You need to plug equipment into the generator using heavy-duty outdoor rated extension cords. I noticed in that one picture of the little homemade thing, there was a nice heavy-duty extension cord in the back of that. I was pleased to see that. You need to make sure your generator is grounded per the manufacturer's directions. So I'm going to refer you back to item number 1 to read all of the manufacturer's directions and warnings. There's obviously a fire hazard because you're working with flammable fuel. You want to use only approved canisters, and then fuel additives will be required for the gasoline and diesel if you're going to store it for more than a few months. You have to maintain your fuel supply during the event that occurs, and sometimes it can be difficult to acquire fuel. So as somebody's making a decision about, is this the right solution for me to power whatever I need to power when there's an emergency, will they be able to get additional diesel and gasoline, or can they store enough where they are? Do they have a facility to store it and the capacity to store it? Sometimes, like if you're in an apartment, you're not going to have any place to store that. So those could be some thoughts.
One of the things you can also do to ensure the freshness of your gasoline is, we talked about on National Preparedness Month in September, checking your batteries. You can also take that gasoline and put it into your car, and then take the gas cans to the gas station next time you fill up, and just keep the gas fresh by rotating it through your vehicle and topping it off a couple times a year to make sure that you always have fresh gasoline. But as Angela said, not every place, especially apartment complexes, wants their residents to be storing gasoline on their balcony.
Right. And then there's that whole piece again of that maintenance and planning. Does your consumer have the resources and capacity to be able to do that type of maintenance and planning? And then you do have to turn the generator off and let it cool down before you refuel. So if it's really, really cold outside, there's going to be some downtime when you're not having that resource available. So you just need to plan for that in your overall planning. Some general safety issues. You want to use generators outside in a dry location, at least 15 feet away from structures. Again, this could be a challenge for some individuals that may not live in a place where they could do that. You want to use with adequate ventilation because of carbon monoxide issues. It could be that you need to make sure you have a secure location to prevent theft. Recently, I was visiting a friend in a lakeside community, and all of the lake houses along this lake had those fancy Generac generators, but they were all boxed in by little fences and padlocked. So even in this kind of gated only community where funds were not an issue, they still had to put that preparation in place. This particular link will take you to a website that has general generator safety, and it is in multiple languages and downloadable in PDF. So we included that because as you in-service and train your staff and who will be working with your consumers, that may be a resource you want to use. Because as I've said, you cannot be too redundant about the safety issues. Again, do not plug your portable generator into your home's electrical circuit panel, because if you do, you could put somebody else's life at risk if they were working on that electricity line. It will require regular maintenance. Gasoline or diesel fuel can't be stored in the generator. So at the conclusion of the event, you have to evacuate the fuel from the generator to store it. That's another.
Best to just run it dry.
Just run it dry.
Yeah.
Secure storage is needed when it's not in use as well because of possible theft. Your lease agreements or local ordinances or homeowners associations may have restrictions that you'll have to research before making your purchase. And you must be able to maintain with or without assistance, including moving, starting, refueling, and adding oil as needed. And again, refer back to those manufacturer's instructions for all of those details. So this little gadget can be helpful if you live in a highly emergency prone area and you're going to be using your generator potentially often. So it is a thing that goes between the outside of your house and the inside of your house. So on the outside of your house, you have the generator, you plug it into this, and on the inside of your house, it makes just basically a wall plug for you to plug your extension cords into. So
Yeah, generally this comes with 4 110-volt wall plugs on the inside, not just 2. So it's
right.
Quite nice.
So you're not looping into your electrical circuits in your house. You're just putting a box between the outside and inside. So you're not having to run a bunch of cables through your window. So maybe you're trying to, cool your house and you're opening your window to put the cables through and you're letting in that 110-degree weather. That defeats the purpose. So it just provides an environmental envelope for you to be able to access that generator that's outside while you are inside your house. And again, somebody who had some skills might be able to install this on their own, but probably you're going to be hiring somebody to install that. So there may be a little bit of a financial burden there. This is an example of a whole house generator that's hooked up to a natural gas line.
This is actually a member of our work group. This is their generator that they purchased after Winter Storm Uri.
With a additional funding source. They got funding for that too. That wasn't like they just went and bought that.
Yeah.
A little bit about solar generators. This is kind of got a lot of discussion lately. They require large and cumbersome lithium ion battery. They require a large array of solar panels, and you have to have UV rays. Now, it doesn't have to be super bright Texas 110-degree sunlight UV rays, but you do have to have enough UV rays. Solar panels and or large capacity battery may be the only viable option for some apartment dwellers, and because you don't have to have it 15 feet away, it may be easier to store. Do keep in mind that it's not going to give you oceans of power. You're going to get a little bit to use. So, like if you go to a camping store and you look at one of the little kits they have, there's like about between 3 and 6 panels about that big, and you lay them out while you go hiking all day, and you come back and you've got enough to charge your cell phone or your emergency beeper. And that's really about all you get from that. So it's not going to be as sufficient as the fuel, the gasoline, propane, diesel, or natural gas generated generators.
I would say the one advantage of the solution is that it's scalable. If you have more money, more resources, you can add more panels and get more recharge capacity. Some limitations, people can also steal solar panels and batteries that are out on your apartment balcony. And if it's a weather situation with high winds, if you don't have a way to secure those panels at your residence, that can be an issue as well.
Mm-hmm. And then, so there was a lot of excitement about getting solar panels in Texas after Winter Storm Uri, and then everybody found out what you mean, the solar panels just tie back into the grid and it's not really my power. And no, you have to pay a whole lot more to actually get a battery that's also attached to your house that will actually store some of that solar generated electricity for use later. And it is not an inexpensive adventure. So I live in Austin. The battery that's probably most often used is the one that Tesla makes, and I can drive around my hood or any other hood, even the more affluent neighborhoods, and you just don't see that many of them. You see a lot of solar panels tying back into the grid, but you don't see a lot of those.
The Tesla power wall, I think, is what they call it.
That's what it's called, a Tesla power wall. So it's not as easy as you think it would be. Now, we're almost to Star Trek George Jetson times, right? So that may be something that comes in the future, but it's not here yet.
Yeah, and there is a phenomenon on this very next slide. By the way, how are we doing on time? I want to make sure that we're...
It is 2:06.
Okay.
And there's a smattering of questions, but not a huge amount.
All right. So this next slide is going to cover some ground that we've already covered. So we're just going to touch on it. But since we talked about generators, we want to remind people when you evaluate whether you want a portable generator, that your car is probably the best generator you already have. With your car engine and your alternator and your battery, you've already got a pretty good system there. Also, storing gasoline for a portable generator in your car is not as safe or as efficient as storing it in a 15-gallon gas tank in your car. So as long as you're maintaining your vehicle and keeping your gas tank topped off before a disaster, you've got a really good solution. All you need to do is add a power inverter to that, and we talked about that already.
Some of the newer cars have them built in, have the power inverters built in.
Yeah. So the electric cars that we're seeing, the Teslas and the Volts and the different cars like that, they also have an output port where you can plug your house into your car. So that's becoming a much more common thing. But just a couple of tips. Make sure you maintain your vehicle if you're planning on using it as a power source in an emergency. Be sure to top off your fuel tanks in preparation for any known disaster. A lot of vehicles these days, they have USB ports in the dash. They have the 12-volt cigarette lighter adapters that you can add USB adapter to. One of our vehicles, even on the second row, it has a 110-volt power inverter built into the vehicle, and you can power a laptop off that, but you wouldn't want to plug your toaster or your even your coffee maker into that. So you want to read the owner's manual to see how much power that those can deliver. If you exceed that and try to draw more power, you're going to find yourself digging for fuses and trying to put those into your vehicle. So you don't want to do that. But checking your owner's manual and then buying the appropriately rated power inverter can very easily turn your car into a generator and meet a lot of your power needs. And of course, here's the warnings again: never run the car in an enclosed space like a garage or even a carport if it's not properly ventilated. It can result in the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning, which sadly we saw quite a few deaths from that following Winter Storm Uri. So what do we do if our needs exceed 72 hours, especially for this population of individuals that depend on durable medical equipment? You want to monitor your power resources before you get to that point and make an appropriate plan. When it gets close to that point, you want to call 311 and request an evacuation to an appropriate shelter. During Winter Storm Uri, they were calling them warming centers. Sometimes they call them cooling centers in communities during the summer. And in San Antonio, where we were just at for one of our meetings, they're calling them resilience hubs. Make sure that you identify any local, state, and federal government-sponsored shelters that could be a resource to you. Often they don't announce where the shelters are until that disaster time. And unfortunately, some of the warming centers were not open overnight, but they can serve as a place where you can take your DME or assistive technology and plug in. Really, hospital emergency rooms were an option for a lot of people as people were running low on power. That was one of the only options available for a lot of people in our community and around the state. You want to plan for a network of support, those wraparound services, including personal care attendants, family, friends, neighbors. Be sure to get to know your community and plan for those networks of support. And then also your local fire station is a good resource to get to know in terms of backup power. If it does come time to evacuate, you want to ensure that your durable medical equipment and assistive technology is protected when you evacuate. That can involve using dry bags or Ziploc bags or any sort of waterproofing to make sure that when you evacuate, it's going to stay safe and protected. You want to bring all of your charging cables with you for your mobility devices or your AT, and any additional batteries that you have, and user's manuals. Back up any of your custom files for those augmentative communication devices. Having that backed up to the cloud or backed up to a flash drive is a good idea. For me, I use a screen reader called JAWS, and I also use another product called ZoomText, having my settings backed up in case I end up in a shelter or someplace where I have to reinstall my assistive technology. Having those configuration files already set the way I want it can make things go a lot easier. So just make sure that your technology is ready to travel when you are. And then here's,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Just to register with your local utilities critical care registry. It's always a little bit different everywhere. There may be state level ones, and there may be local, county, municipal ones as well. So you need to investigate what's available in your area. For example, in Texas, we have the State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry, where you can, if you have a disability, you can register with them so they know where you are. Your state may have something similar. Any local office, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just a quick note on the critical care registry with your utility. That is not necessarily a guarantee of being on a protected circuit or of not losing power due to a natural disaster. What the critical care registries do promise is that you will not lose power for lack of payment for your utility bill if you're on the critical care registry. In our state, it does require having a doctor's note to indicate that you're an individual that uses power dependent medical equipment. I know that registries are controversial around the country. The State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry, or STEER, is different from the Critical Care Registry. Texans can register for STEER by calling 211, and the data custodian for that registry is the county's emergency manager. And I do have some good news. Due to Winter Storm Uri, a bill passed in our state's legislature that required that certain individuals with certain medical needs receive a well check that are on the State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry. That's not everybody that's necessarily on that, but these registries are typically used for disaster planning. They're not necessarily a guarantee of a specific emergency assistance service. But after you've done all these other things we've talked about during the last hour, these are some additional things that you'll want to look at.
So then, we had a question about, I don't know if 311 is nationwide or not.
So
and then we had another comment that 311 is variable from locale to locale for how effective it is. So I guess the answer or solution for that is to know your area. And if 311 is not an option that's really good, don't recommend that one.
Yeah, the N11 system is Universal, but not consistent. So those N11 numbers like 211, 311, 411, et cetera. And then the new one, the suicide prevention line, although they are universally assigned, they're not consistently used in rural areas of the state. If you call 311, which is typically non-emergency local government, that may not be a service that's available in your area. So yes, get to know your area.
So funding this, there's been a couple of questions about this. Many times our consumers do have financial restrictions and funding may be a problem. FEMA will fund post-disaster, but the person has to be in a place where they could use a generator, for example. And many times, you know, some of my consumers don't have physical homes that they live in. So there can be challenges with that. There's not an easy solution for that. You have to really connect with your local providers and find out what's available in your local areas. We did find out after Uri, we kind of got all of the people that support people with disabilities formed our kind of own little network, and we still meet periodically. In fact, we were able to support some of the support for COVID-19 because of that. So we looped in our infrastructure better so that when people reached out to any one of us, we could connect them to the right thing they had to be connected to. But that was just a Texas solution. There may be something different for you. You can ask for backup power solutions to be considered in your original funding source package, whatever that might be. It may or may not be funded because, you know, sometimes funding sources vary from place to place, person to person, time to time. Maybe a healthcare reimbursement account like PayFlex, or maybe ABLE accounts could be an option. And then your state AT programs may have low interest loans available that could fund some of this. Each program has their own parameters they operate under, so yours may or may not do that. It would be, you have to contact them to find out for sure. And then I think we have just a few more slides here.
The next slide on FEMA generator reimbursement, it's just important to know that it's not after a disaster has happened, it's after a disaster has been declared, a presidential disaster declaration. And although FEMA can cover these post-disaster, some of the challenges under their individual assistance program are, if you think about it, post-disaster, can you even find a generator in that area? All the generators in the big box stores like Home Depot or Lowe's may already be cleaned out. So do follow the links on this slide to understand what the FEMA generator reimbursement, and once again, this is a reimbursement program. It's not a funding program. So it's important to know. We do have some information. Our state's Medicaid program and some of our Medicaid waivers can cover generators for those waiver recipients. And we have posted a link to some Texas guidance, which was recently updated. When the guidance first came out, it was limited to gasoline powered generators only. And one of the accomplishments of the work group that Angela and I are on is that we got them to reevaluate that policy to include dual fuel and gas, propane or gas powered generators due to safety issues. And they may also be open to other power solutions like solar generators based on that individual need.
And so you may want to, if your state does not have some of that guidance, you can certainly use that wording to maybe guide your state to do that. And then this is a sort of all of the things we've referenced previously are sort of recapped on this slide. So these links are there. And Dave, just to clarify, they will get a copy or a PDF version of these slides. Am I correct?
That is correct, Angela.
There's been a couple of questions about that. And then I have not caught every question. I tried to answer some of them as I was going. Is there any that we still need to cover, Jamie or Dave?
So one question that was in there, Angela, was, are any of the panelists aware of resources for low to no income clients to be able to have backup power options purchased for them? I'm thinking especially of clients who are unhoused and or who don't have consistent access to plug-in power for their AT or the durable medical equipment.
I don't have an easy answer for that. If it's an area with resources, and there are some of those centers that Ron was referring to, that may be a resource.
Yeah, when they're talking about resilience hubs, they're placing these resilience hubs in areas that are a protected circuit. When we had rolling blackouts and load shed, the grid has to be kept in constant balance where the amount of power generated equals the amount of load. And when we were not able to generate enough power, they had to turn off circuits. But certain circuits where hospitals, police stations, and fire stations are located, or essential services, those circuits remained energized or powered. And so as they're looking at where to place these resiliency centers or shelters, they're looking for locations like senior centers or recreation centers and communities, and even some schools where they will remain on a protected circuit, but also have the ability for members of the public to come to those locations for warmth or for cooling during the summer, and also to power their devices. If somebody is unhoused and they depend on powered durable medical equipment, I think accessing some of the homeless resources in their community, Salvation Army and some shelters, and also getting additional services. But I agree, there's not an easy solution for a situation like that.
There's also another request to comment and advise on the difficulty of connecting with manufacturers, including getting connected to somebody on the manufacturer's end who is really knowledgeable, especially for mobility devices. And
from my personal experience, if my local DME distributor is usually who I'm contacting before I contact the manufacturer. That may not work for everyone, but that more local relationship is always what I tend to go to first before I go to like a contact us at website thing for the actual maker of the gadget.
Yeah,
do you have something to add to that, Ron?
They provide really good customer support. I think that's really their whole point of existence, is to be the interface between the customer or the end user and the manufacturer. And one of our partners on this work group was Angel Medical down in Houston, and they were hot swapping batteries and delivering backup power solutions to people in the middle of the winter storm, and
pretty much
really,
for free.
Yeah, doing a great job taking care of their customers. So I would definitely say go to the distributor before you go to the manufacturer. Although some manufacturers, the information is up on a website and it's pretty available.
Other questions, Dave or Jamie, that we've missed?
Somebody asked the question, is 311 available nationwide?
I thought we answered that live. We're not. It's a fuzzy answer.
Yeah. So 911 is it's an emergency right away. And during some of the disasters that were declared in our state, some of the municipalities that ask people to call their local office of emergency management, ask them to access that service through 311, which is considered still an emergency, but not to the same extent as 911, like somebody's needing assistance with transportation to a shelter. And so if 311 is not the right number in your jurisdiction, use the appropriate number that is, which may be 911.
Thank you. So there's other questions about the recording and the slides. So the recording will be captioned and it will be archived on the AT3 Center YouTube channel, and the slides will be sent out. All these things will occur once this presentation and its recording have been remediated. So please be patient with us and we will make sure that we get those things out to you. There was a question about URL links in the PDF. We will try to make sure we accommodate that as well.
Yeah, we did a pretty good job of testing all the links before finalizing this presentation for this audience. So if anything doesn't work, you should have our contact at the end of this presentation. We're glad to hear from you, not only on any resources you want, but also your feedback on this presentation.
Okay, well, 6 minutes left. What, any more questions?
All right, National Preparedness Month is right around the corner in September. And if you're not prepared for yourself or your family, this is a good time to take an assessment of what your needs are for backup power. And once again, the 3 tenets to be prepared are make a plan, build a kit, and stay informed. So we hope that this benefits you. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela and Ron, and thank you for everybody who participated today. Without any other further questions, we will wish you the best in your emergency planning.
Goodbye.
Be safe, y'all. Bye-bye.